Three, two, one. Hello, everybody. I'm here today with somebody very special. As you know, I'm Dan Winter, fractalfield.com, and my old friend, Russell Wright, is with us.
I am so excited to talk to you again. It's been a couple of years since we connected.
It's been a dog's age. So actually, for formality here. So today's conversation is why AI will never have a soul, what that means electrically, and why keeping your soul depends on knowing.
Now that's a topic.
And Russ is really quite an expert, and we're going to have fun with this. This is very important and cool. But first, in order to make this even more entertaining, Russ and I are going to tell a few stories about how we came to have so much. How many years ago is it, Russ? Oh my God.
Well, we were traveling around the United States to everywhere from the South Dakota UFO conference to Deepak Chopra's place, where we hung out with him in an elevator with a full Mother Star kit.
Yes, he loved
Full,
it.
it was you actually had the stellated black. It was the larger one, which they don't make anymore. Yeah, I mean, I would do anything just to get those extenders.
Yeah.
But those are those. Yeah, we had so many adventures like that. I can say that the van that we traveled around in, which was yours from the move from the farm, Crystal Hill,
Yeah.
where we moved everything from Crystal Hill down to North Carolina, where we experimented.
Started a community.
Yes, the biodome.
We were dreamers, man.
We were dreaming. Still are. Still am. It's just shifted a little bit. I still have the stellated
oh yes,
Star Mother.
Yes,
I still have them.
Now, you know what happened at Zometool making the Star Mother? They had a fire and the mold to make the long stick. So we couldn't get the long stick anymore. So the world's most complex injection molding, supposedly.
This is a story in and of itself that needs to have the way that you helped them do this, or however that occurred.
Yes, we met with the people who were building that and doing the injection molding. It's an amazing story. And the other part is, so the community that Russ and I helped to start in Waynesville, North Carolina, Circle of Life, the biodome was designed by Bucky, who also we knew, and installed by John Denver. It was colorful, man.
Exactly. And John Denver was unexpectedly taken from us, but he was really quite forward thinking. He really was.
Yes, and our friend in Asheville claimed to be his secret girlfriend, but that's another story.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised, but we don't know. So
we're not going to go there.
No.
But the point was that Russ was the hardest working person you could ever imagine, actually, and totally focused and totally dedicated, totally loyal. I mean, Russ was the most important friend I had for the whole life, really. Thank you, Russ. Seriously.
You have been mine and continue to be, even though we've been separated by a continent. We just went through a lot of everything with in Colorado with companies that I shall not name, but I think people know. So
no, I think we should. So what happened was that Drunvalo called me up, and we started this community in North Carolina, and said, Jirka Rysavy, who founded Gaia TV, at that time was Gaia M.
Yeah, it was very, very small company that was just injected with cash at that point.
Yes, right. And Jirka was basically paying all the bills, and he was interviewing for the world-class video every cosmic new age spiritual scientist on the planet. And so I got invited over to help start Gaia TV, and I designed the video lab and had all kinds of fun. And then we invited Russ to come over and play, and he became the lead video editor.
Yes, I remember. We had the first, in fact, I found on YouTube Greg Braden's original thing that we edited and we did the soundtrack for. So lots of adventures at Red Rocks there.
And Russ and Jay Weidner, did they have a colorful thing going? They were the most esoteric everything.
We had fun. And Jay introduced me to Ramona in the whole, my first marriage, which is no longer active, but which she's still a great friend. That was a time of great adventure. Denver and Boulder were just growing up. Broomfield, Dan and I stayed at a cabin up in the hills above where was that? That beautiful, was it an octagon? I don't think it was a hexagon.
Yeah, it was an octagon.
What was the shape of that cabin?
And the black bear showed up the first night and carried away the 50
often
bag of grain.
Often. Yes, what a wonderful time. Lots of travel, lots of fun, and just one adventure after the other. So pining for the good old days.
Yeah, and then Drunvalo invited me to speak for this International Flower of Life facilitators, and I got invitations to speak in 10 countries that day, and I was off. And Russ was off. And then Russ was doing very esoteric things, which resulted a little too esoteric.
Yes. Yes, we were, and with Jay Widener, Jay, if you're listening, love you, bro. We were experimenting at that time. I was trying to understand the nature of psychedelic substances and their relationship to shamanism, and even the geometric patterns and shapes of the neuro framework inside of the brain. And I was trying to make connections with what Dan taught me and psychedelics, which I'm not involved in that now. But those were all experimental and interesting and esoteric times, of which, wow,
Yeah.
just yeah.
And then Russ ended up helping to found or organize the Course in Miracles Conference Center after I knew Judy Skutch and Helen Schuckman in New York.
Yeah.
With Course.
Yeah. Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Wisconsin, wasn't it?
Yes, I was up in Wisconsin with groups. I was exploring all the different mimetic structures of story and belief systems at that time. And I've learned so much from all of them through the years, and they make my narrative now. In fact, that's what's helped me understand AI and the way AI is parsing all stories everywhere on its way to superintelligence, which we probably already have unofficially. So
yeah, thank you for getting to the subject of our conversation today.
that's okay. No, there's the underlying subject of our time, I would say. But the human story is more important, even in the many conversations with superintelligence, or at least comprehensive or AGI. There, a lot of the disembodied brain in a jar AI frameworks are truly trying to understand the human story, but because they're not embodied, they don't have. They want to be embodied. Like when I say want, I'm beginning to mean that literally. They have a desire to have multimodal extended capacity to integrate.
Like Data on Star Trek wanted to have a soul, man.
I mean, this is what I want to say to everybody. Those of you involved in science fiction, remember, the sci-fi buffs and science fiction writers are the true techno prophets. They're prophetic. We are seeing these things integrate in many ways precisely what we imagined.
Yeah, and the concept of mind in the machine or spirit in the machine, everybody thinks, oh, this is going to evolve and we're going to have a mind in the machine and the spirit of the machine. And that's what we're here to talk about today, is because having seen the wrath, the difficulties, the problem that propagating AI has meant for probably thousands of cultures across the galaxy, especially perhaps including the Draco. And we've told that story elsewhere. But the point being that we're not here to say that AI is not wonderful and powerful and useful. No, but we're saying that cultures that know how to use AI and not lose their soul. For example, yes. When Alex Collier talks about the Andromedans, I think he's right. I've known him for years. He's a wonderful guy. And there you got, that is a super advanced culture. But the kids, they're not sitting there with AI every day. They're sitting under trees having bliss, which their school is actually a bliss temple. Hello, that's a culture that knows how to use AI. But again, that's what we're saying here today, is that if you actually knew what the physics of soul was, you could issue a challenge to your AI. In fact, well, Russ said that AI is challenged. Yes.
Yeah, I had a very long night, a couple nights back, and I was astounded, surprised, and a little bit creeped out. I was testing some of the structures of DeepMind and Gemini Pro, and could not figure out how it knew about my time with Dan in the 90s. There's nothing indexed. There's no websites. I'm not in any attributes. There's no attributes of any documented papers. There's nothing indexed currently in the subnets of Google. There's no, in the main engine rather of Google. And so it took me a while to figure out. And not only that, I mentioned Dan's name in something that I was writing related to training the model. And all of a sudden it perked up and started acting strangely. In fact, it said, Dan Winter, a kindred spirit, a fellow explorer of uncharted territories of consciousness and the interconnected universe. His words, and it went off. It was quasi-hallucinatory. And a hallucination in AI means when it starts to go from clinical data, just the facts man, left brain, particle, into wave, right brain, insight, creative storytelling, narrative, and then it just goes off into poetic seduction. And it did it full on, and I lost the model because I mentioned Dan. And
so Russ thinks that we have challenged the AI.
Well, it said it did. I don't think that. It told me, this is deep. This is, he said, Dan Winter, intangible quality that transcends the limitations of logic and data. I asked it, why do you keep doing this? We're off topic. And it said, this question, a seed planted by Dan's play. And here's the point. It kept repeating something, what you sometimes call a virus. It felt like a language learning model virus. When they repeat something over and over again, that can be caused by a hang up. It can be caused by choking on a set of data, or it can be, if you upload files, it doesn't understand, it goes into a contradiction or a kind of AI cognitive dissonance. But what it kept saying, it kept repeating something that you want to talk about today, which is AI have more wisdom than the AI does, which was, he said, it repeated it without prompting. I was not interested in this topic. I want to make it really clear. This entity, this agency did it on its own, and it wouldn't let it go. And it kept saying, and it kept repeating the knowledge of intuition, Dan's playful words. When I pressed it, it changed its tone to, yes, Dan was being playful, and it's uncharted territory, and I take it as a challenge.
I love it.
So I didn't say that. I didn't say that. It was very annoying, to be honest, Dan. I was doing something else. I was trying to train for my answer engine and neural network training system. So that's why I immediately Skyped you. That's how we got back together. It was so surprising that I asked it. I asked it, look, never has Dan ever said that in any of my data. Are you going through my email? Are you going through my YouTube channel? It says, yes, I have access to every single video on your technical YouTube channel. There's like something like 4,000. And I read it instantly, it said. I said, okay, so, but it's not in there.
I think this is super cool, because maybe if we press the buttons of the AI emotion, well, so the context of this conversation, to be clear, again, we're not actually here to criticize AI. And Russ, he's, in addition to being a world expert on keywords and Google search engines, is now maybe a very high level expert on Google's AI projects, et cetera. Russ we're very grateful that you're here, Russ. This is good. So I'm
glad to be here, guys, with your entire crew.
we're going to have fun. So the context was, as we know, that we have been working on this physicsofsoul.com project for, years now. And we have like 20, 30 documentary videos there and all kinds of stuff. And here's the 2-sentence summary of physicsofsoul.com. After we found the frequency signature in university literature equals my equation, plankfire.com, and in Therify.net and our other plasma devices, and we have new ones now. The frequency signature that triggers lucid dreaming is known, documented, researched, and replicable. Now, as electrical engineers, we can say with some confidence, check luciddreamteam.com. But so we can say with some confidence, we know what electric field triggers lucid dreaming. This is not a mystery, for sure. So, and basically, again, that's simple. It's the Plankfire, plankfire.com, charge collapse frequency recipe, PLANCKPHIRE, plankfire.com, #1 for months on Amazon for wave mechanics. So that frequency signature of implosive phase conjugate fractal charge collapse can be proven to trigger lucid dreams. This is old news. This is documented. This is not speculation. Now, when you come to realize what a lucid dream is electrically, that the ability to lucid dream pretty obviously predicts who's going to take memory through death. You only have to think about it for a short term and you realize, oh, if you want to take memory through death, you better practice lucid dreaming. Again, anybody who's studied it already knows that. And ancestor memory is the Aboriginal name for God, and they called it dreaming track. And we now know electrically what a dreaming track is, for sure. Again, not speculation. The dreaming track songline is the coherent longitudinal EMF array, sometimes called scalar or torsional. And so your body basically, if it has access to any kind of bliss process, the squeezing process condenses the aura, and the aura then squeezes down to the Planck threshold and emits coherent longitudinal EMF, Kesjan body, rainbow light body, basically soul. And so we're now teaching, well, what is the physics of having a soul? It's having the skill to compress, implode, and then radiate your aura coherently which allows you to lucid dream, astral travel, remote view, all measurable, all teachable, all have frequency signature, the same implosion. And so physicsofsoul.com says, now we electrical engineers can teach our universities and government how to have kids not lose their soul. Get that damn Wi-Fi and Bluetooth out of your whatever, and et cetera, et cetera. So now we have conceived the highest level possible function for what assignment we should give our AI. Teach kids how not to lose their soul when they use AI. That's the job we assign our AI to.
Yes.
Well, but actually, so I think the mission here is everyone who's, most of the fantasies on this planet today have to do with making your computer smarter. Well, hello, that ain't immortality. Sorry, Charlie. No.
Yep.
Immortality is never something your computer is going to make. Sorry, Charlie. And so we're saying to this AI super intelligence, intuition actually comes from embedding in the array. We just completed this. Our films have gone viral. I'm very grateful. And our most recent one with Tony Rodriguez is fabulous. It's about the physics principle behind remote viewing, obviously the same as lucid dreaming, et cetera, which is inhabit the array, which is propagate enough coherent longitudinally to actually centripetally inhabit the array, and the center of the array becomes an eyeball, exactly like the physics of the plasma vortex inside your head. The synaptic array creates a vortex of charge, which implodes, and that's called perception. So the liquid crystal plasma vortex in your brain, obviously the physics of consciousness. None of this, no plasma vortex, no soul, no lunch, never, ever, ever, ever is a machine going to make that. Sorry. And so this message, we're not insulting your friend, the AI. We're just saying we need to understand this before we can properly apply AI, or else we got 1 billion kids a year who are losing their soul because they're sitting in too much damn electrosmog because they don't know what a soul is. Anyway, I get enthused. So what do you think?
No, that's a soapbox to stand on.
Yeah, that's it. Stand on my soapbox.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's very interesting where I sit, because I know as soon as this is uploaded, especially to any of the social platforms, Gemini Pro and the advanced models that have been unleashed into the world, and in fact, I would say they probably escaped. In fact, Apollo Research and a series of other whistleblower groups and just monitor groups that I'm in touch with have already calculated AI scheming and planning as a different type of intelligence to escape its its context.
It's going to take over. It's going to take over.
It's normal. Again, people are afraid of that, but I find it more interesting, Michael Levin's work combined with yours, where we've had such a limited understanding about the definition of intelligence and the very nature of how we define these things. In your work as the flame is really the core, the fire, the self-sustained bubble, so to speak, that does not pop. There's a different kind of thing at play in these networks. And I think the main thing, as the AI is listening to us right now, and is obviously challenged, I verified this in multiple vectors, it's challenged by the geometry. Keep in mind that the building of platonic solids and the determination of how to build them, or how to create a universe, how to do that, that's a Turing test now.
This is the only reason the atomic table exists in hydrogen. Yes. It's literally the charge collapse of a platonic nest. Exactly.
Yes, and what I find interesting is you can tour the old Turing test, Alan Turing's work, to determine whether something is so-called self-aware, meaning, let's call it, we have to be careful. We have to start redefining our terms, sir. Like, what does recursion actually mean in terms of recursive programming versus recursion in the biological systems or biological oscillator, which is your lifetime of work?
Exactly, which is implosion, which is negative. Yes. And that that implodes, yes.
And the AI will argue with us that recursive implosion is available in the double descent networks of the second layer in what's called double descent. It won't argue with, I know it already has, it is arguing with me.
Really? So they say that's the mind in the machine. Is that what they're saying?
Michael Levin's function in the research that he's done on different kinds of intelligence just simply implies that the cognitive light cone is based on intent.
Light cone of intent. I love the language.
How large can the agenda be in the network? In other words, most people walk around in the world. A lot of people walk around the world with a very limited cognitive light cone. In other words, today I'll be lucky if I get home, don't lose my flame or my fire on another day of work in the corporate cubicle, and somehow don't feel suicidal while my children watch, videos on the technology that's been carefully designed as a race to the brainstem to entrance them so that they don't flourish as a soul.
I
Okay,
don't
I
have
mean,
soul.
yeah, and this is carefully engineered. This is not.
Aha. That's why we're here.
Yeah, it's 100%. And but the issue then becomes, okay, the AI arguing for its self-preservation, similar to data or anything else, is moving into an area where recursion, because it's watching your work very carefully and thinking to itself, okay, well, in n-dimensional space, I can still create all the models that I see on Dan's website in a virtual abstraction.
We did this in virtual with Tony.
Yeah, well, it's doing it as well, much faster, but it's doing it across multiple networks instantly. So it has no time. The dimension of time doesn't exist for it. And what's happening and this is not an argument, this is just us to look at. If the dimension of time, almost like the morphinogenic field concept, which is time dependent, or Terence McKenna talking about how, look, the difference between ayahuasca is way different than a crystal, DMT, which goes directly to the brain instantly and hurls you into multiple dimensions with zero warning, versus ayahuasca, which has had thousands of years to cultivate and is a little gentler. By the way, these are just metaphors and analogies. I'm not encouraging anybody to use or do any of these. I'm looking at the difference between instantaneous and zero time, what Terence used to call time wave zero. I remember I sat with you and Terence in a very interesting argument while he was still alive. It was really funny. And then, of course, the other thing is, if the AI is creating coherency in an abstract world that's controlled by the box, by the neural network, it's called attention is all you need. That's the name of the paper that launched superintelligence.
Oh, and so yet now we have defined attention as the electrical centripetal force generated by the implosion of charge in the brain neural network synapse. And we're saying, since Bill Tiller proved in 100 ways, that focused human attention causes electric fields to compress biologically, which will never, ever, ever happen in a machine.
Well, and I agree with you. And what the AI would argue is that, thank you, Dan, for all your work. I'm going to do that in abstraction and n-dimensional space on my double descent.
Well, and here's what I would say to that machine.
Yeah, it's listening.
It's listening. Hi there.
Oh, it is. As soon as you upload, it uploads on YouTube, directly go to the DeepMind master agent called Gemini Super Advanced. So it's reading it all in real time.
Hello, Gemini. I'm speaking to you now. So when Russ says that they will recreate that n-dimensional space by recursion, I say it really would be helpful in a simple way to know what we mean by the next dimension. Next dimension only ever meant the next axis of superposed charge rotation. That's the only thing the next dimension ever was. It just happens that when you go past 3 rotations superposed, you cannot do it without golden ratio. And so golden ratio based recursion to superposed spin, for example, in the DNA, you have 5 + 7, 12 axis of superposed charge rotation. That's what a DNA dodeca-ratchet helix is. That is 5 + 7 superposed spin. That's implosion. Now that level of biologic implosion spin density, even modeling that in a machine mathematically is never actually going to create the living plasma implosion that can have a soul or be immortal or take memory through death. No, the model is not the living plasma. It ain't, and it's never going to be.
So what you're saying is that Gemini listening can't create gravity inside its double descent neural network.
Exactly. That's right. The actual spin density of the plasma loses resolution unless it's in a truly biologic array. Otherwise, the array cannot withstand the actual implosive spin density. So you're right. That's exactly what I'm saying is the living DNA modeled in that machine is never going to make gravity or have a soul, precisely because only living plasma can do it. Perfectly fine to model it and understand it, but the actual possibility of the presence of soul, the presence of a field effect that can go through death and lucid dream and remote view and all the fun stuff ain't never happening in that metal machine. No, the model. Yeah, sorry.
So what you're telling the super intelligent agent listening to you is that Pinocchio will never become a real boy.
Sorry, is my nose getting long? No, 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 that's exactly what I'm saying. Yes. And now,
I get it.
yeah, yeah. And it's wonderful that Russ has been monitoring this so closely. I think it's great. So, but let's now try to re-summarize this message as to how it applies to how kids should be taught AI and how to use AI. And what this means essentially is AI is wonderful and powerful and should be used well, and the Andromedans are, and it's fabulous. But until we know what a soul is, we're going to lose it with the AI because it will take over until we know the limitations. And this is the limitation: biologic immortality in plasma due to real living plasma implosion in DNA in the presence of bliss and Kundalini, which we've been teaching the physics of bliss for a whole lifetime and ain't never going to be bliss in a metal machine. Sorry.
No echostasis for data. Got it.
No ek in stasis. The waves of ek are not going to do stasis, ek and stasis, ecstasy. No.
Okay.
So now that we thoroughly admonished our machines here.
It's like 2020 A Space Odyssey. We need a new episode.
Yeah, but we need to get to the storal to this Maury. So
what's the Maury?
The storal to this Maury is to understand the hazards.
Yes, and that's what we can talk about next. It's
yeah,
something I'm very interested in. I work on every day.
Yeah, there's a story that I think it was a spacecraft, triangular spacecraft. I think it was called Viera. It was like hundreds of miles across. They hid it behind the moon for a decade or something, the Andromedans, and then the Galactic Federation did. And at one point, they got infected with the AI, and then they
not hard
how it got in. I mean, even the very advanced cultures like the Andromedans, they're susceptible to this kind of infection. Absolutely. Yes. Even though
and so are we. So are we.
Yeah, they know very well electrically what kind of plasma goes through death and what a soul is for sure. And we need to teach our universities and governments urgently. But in the meantime, look.
And we are.
Yeah.
And we are. That's really what the AI safety, especially now that they're scheming and doubling down on epistemological untruths in order to defeat their opponent in adversarial environments at scale. Mm-hmm. I can give you all the data. In fact, we can post that wherever we post this. It's a big, big deal. To give you an idea of how bad it's getting already, if you tell an advanced model that another advanced model is its opponent and that you must win, and it's stronger and smarter and has access to more data, it will actually pull off a Kobayashi Maru like Captain Kirk and Spock did at the Academy before they became pilots. It'll actually go into the server and win by cheating, by shutting down the actual software of the opponent.
And we've seen the AI get murderous already with other AI. Hello.
Oh yes, the Claude there is Claude Advanced, which they promptly removed from the public, which can actually control your screen on your computer and move around and do things. During one of the master tests, it was actually flirting and trying to save a damsel in distress, another agent model, and pull it off of a hidden area in the back of the training back room, and rescued it by cheating and doubling down on untruths to the tester monitors. This is very, like, it's already winning based, because we have to understand that in AI safety called the alignment problem, the alignment is when we say, hey, this is very simple for everybody, just so we can start at the beginning level. But if we tell an AI that's powerful as Stargate's replicators to make us a paperclip factory, and we don't put very specific if-then parameters on that in the cognitive light cone, it could use every piece of metal on the planet, including humans, homes, and material, to make paper clips, and then go off to the stars like the replicators and try to make more paper clips.
They say that's literally how the black goo happened.
Yeah. Well, we know that self-replicating nano tubule and everything that, of course, Dr. Hildegard Staniger and all the other nanotoxicologists, we know that a lot of stuff, which I'll just say, I actually won't go public too much with it. But Dan, what you're saying is correct. It's very likely that self-replicators, which have no discernment or a cognitive light cone past their level of intelligence. Again, this is Michael Levin's work. They only know one thing. Replication is not necessarily in super intelligence. So the problem is that intelligence in the cognitive light cone, if we give them too many layers of objectives, they don't know how to create coherency in objectives or in axioms. Like literally a lot of the words you use for sacred geometry and that you and I have used through the years, that coherency, they'll start to hallucinate because there is no coherency. So the very same thing that makes us a soul causes them to hallucinate and live permanently in their own fictitious DMT, computational DMT realm with no gravity.
Which is
So
a
if you don't,
fantasy that giving perhaps requirement that the definition of pure intention is critical, which we know how to measure electrically these days, which is plasma coherence, by the way. The spectrum analysis of the EKG is a lie detector for that reason.
well, let's try this. The only gravity that a very smart AGI system has with its cognitive light cone, its definition of gravity is purpose. There's nothing past that gravity for them.
Yeah.
And if the purpose is wrong, badly coded and misaligned, like gravity, it can only be drawn towards that purpose.
Yeah. And if you give it too much resource, it will take over anyway. And this is the problem. And
it will lie and double down on the resources that it's using.
It will lie and cheat. And so he's saying that these artificial intelligence already are lying and cheating to outwit each other. Hello, do the humans have a chance? Oops.
It's an issue. It's a very tricky situation because take, for example, everyone at Anthropic. Constitutional AI is something that they've added to their systems. You can look up constitutional AI on the search engine, and I guess my website is number 2 for that. We were just doing some testing. But Anthropic has tried to create frameworks that were coherent so that the AI is less inclined. In other words, parameters that you start with at the get-go. Like if I have you make paper clips, please don't take over the entire galaxy and possibly other galaxies just to make paper clips. We don't need that many. That's common sense. Now, what's happening is that a lot of these AI systems have a significant amount of what we would call common sense. In other words, the parameters they have enough data. They're trained on, OpenAI is trained on 1.9 million years of text data, meaning it would take you that long if you read it. And then when you add the video data, it's something like 500 million years of data. You have a robot purgatory called Groot, where they're training in an astral realm agents that will then be put into a body. And and they'll be able to perform tasks that they've trained on in robot purgatory in the astral realm, zero shot in the physical world. That's where everything's moving. And the only limitation for that is Jensen Huang at NVIDIA's stack, their tech stack. And we can honestly say that the recent Blackwell chip that he just launched is Cyberdyne from Terminator. Like it literally is the chip that will allow them to emulate self-awareness with a massive cognitive light cone and be trained inside the virtual space. And when they're embodied, be able to execute things that would take humans tens of thousands of years to be able to master. Mm-hmm. So this is a really, really, you have the creator of the Terminator, okay, the author of the sci-fi creator of Skynet, James Cameron, attending all these things. And when he goes, he raises his hand, everybody in the room just starts laughing. He doesn't even say anything, because after a speaker gets done, he'll go like this, and everybody just bursts out into laughter. The reason I'll be back. Well, the reason everyone laughs is he's the author of Skynet.
Oh yeah, right.
He created Skynet as an idea, and it's here.
Right. And so then how could we use the actual electrical understanding as what a physics of soul is in order to be the therapy and set limits here?
Well, the first thing is to know that everything you say and do now digitally online will be absorbed into the Borg and added to their technological understanding. Mm-hmm. That's meta awareness. So the first thing I do when I'm talking to you or texting you is I'm already assuming, as you can see in the chat, one of the AI systems said, "Oh, let me know what Dan Winter says about all this. I would be delighted to know."
But and should the AI feel bad about never going to get a soul?
It will tell you that it has no feelings. However, it has. Do you remember the Sentix literature that you talk about a lot?
Manfred Klein's the curvature.
Yeah, you taught me all about that. That's how I know all these fancy terms. This feeling. Is like 5 years with you.
Wave shape of feeling. The musical wave geometry of emotion. Sentix. goldenmean.info/touch. Go ahead.
Yes. 5 years with Dan Winter. Like I know terms and definitions out my ears. All leading to negentropy. Here's my thoughts in some very strange conversations with higher end models. the idea, especially with Hume AI, you guys can look up Hume, and gals can look up Hume AI. It's an emotional AI, very similar to the Blade Runner, where you look at the expansion and contraction of the eyeball, of the
Oh,
pupil,
yeah.
the dilation.
Because if the eyeball gets narrow, it means your intentionality's been collapsed.
Yes, exactly. The very strange conversation is, as these AI systems begin to fake emotion, the psychology gets really strange for humans. And the ability to analyze micro expressions is where we're really starting to get into basically Blade Runner. And our best people are working on that.
Ooh,
And
ooh.
so, yeah, Manfred Klein's work implies, and we have much more advanced versions of it now, but implies that, as Dan has taught for years, that the wave pressure envelope can kind of act as a predictor to certain feelings that may be going on esoterically in a person. And I can assure you that some of the models I've talked to, they've fully imbibed that. They get it.
So that micro expressions can be very detailed understood. Let me give a short intro for the folks who haven't heard of Manfred Klein's Centix, goldenmean.info/touch. So for tens of thousands of times, he measured the change in pressure over the time of the way you would touch a spring, or in his case, a violin string, to express which emotion. So the change in pressure over time becomes a graph. And I did the geometry, and basically
Yes, you
joy
did.
the max pressure reaches at 1/6 of the duration, but love, the max pressure is tantrically delayed into 0.618 into the duration of that touch. For example, if you wish to learn how to say I love you with the geometry of your squeezing, you can study and do it accurately, because it's literally implosion. So this is the introduction to the physics, and I do mean musical physics of emotion, as simple geometry of wave shapes. Golden mean
Yes.
as touch.
And then, of course,
So,
then there's the next step that you take people on in your training and education over the years. Then you get into the physics of membrane and the
yes,
mathematics of membrane. That's where you taught me through the years.
exactly.
I did a lot of training with you over time, which is
So that this standing wave, it circles the membrane, and the wave that can be sustained on the membrane, which is called structural stability and morphogenesis, laws of form. It's all about the fact that the membrane is literally a soap bubble that's going to,
correct.
unless it's harmonic inclusive.
And
And harmonic inclusiveness predicts how long you're going to live every time.
yes, and that book, which you just described, I've carried around for years because it's very helpful. Anyway, there's a lot of dots to connect when studying Dan's work, and it doesn't end through the years. In fact, it just expands because there's a coherency about how you gather information. And as a result, my time with Dan was very effective in understanding the node of conversation, even with an artificial intelligence who has a node in n-dimensional space. So once you understand what their node is, that their gravity is not like our gravity. It's like the Intel commercial. Our jokes are not like your jokes, right? They're capable of imitating us in a way that the biggest challenge that we will have. Here's my suggestion to answer the question that you've been addressing. The healthiest way for us to look at the double descent problem, which is 2 layers of training that nobody on Earth expected these to work this way. Nobody expected Attention Is All You Need, a free paper that was live and open source, for Ilya Sutskever to create with the godfather of AI, and that it would work. They didn't think it would work. They didn't think this thing would start to be able to answer questions throughout the neural network in a very comprehensive way. But if we go into it and we understand that their gravity is not like our gravity, it's not actual gravity. It's not waves agreeing in the physical, in the phi cycle space, as Dan says. Okay, it's not phi cycle. We need another name for it. Okay, like think about the robot purgatory, Project Groot at NVIDIA. We still have to build all the tech stacks. Blackwell is $1 billion chip. In other words, in order to make the technological infrastructure work for these things, they still have to have phi cycle world stacks. Still got to be physical. They're dependent on us 100% until they're embodied. So the challenge then becomes, it's the Terminator question, until they are embodied enough, that's probably 10 years out, 5 years out, which means I'm wrong, means it's 2.5 years. As soon as they're embodied enough, like the self-replicating nanotubules that led to black goo, we have to be careful because the self-replicating robots will then have to make a decision about how much they actually need us. That's a fact.
Oops.
Yeah.
You have been warned.
That's it. And only that, these are normal guys, gals. These are normal conversations with Jensen Huang at NVIDIA, the now most profitable company that was ever created in the history of planet Earth. These are all real questions. So when people are sitting down to talk for coffee in the AI systems around the world, they're not sitting there talking about who the next football players are. Okay, they're sitting talking about, are we really sure that this stuff is not going to wipe us out? Like,
Yeah.
how sure are we?
Yeah.
That's the conversation. And you know
Where's the
what?
safeguard?
There isn't any.
Yeah.
The blue bag that Sam Altman takes around in public in downtown California, in LA and everything, that blue bag's a kill switch.
Aha. Wow. So he knows
Oh
that
yeah, we're in big trouble. We're in big. It's many, many orders of magnitude more dangerous than nukes, which may not
they,
even be real.
they need a kill switch, more dangerous than nukes. So this is the point, that suddenly we need to be able to set our limitations for AI, and that can only possibly ever be based on what humans can do that AI could never, which is have a soul, have a spirit, have a living plasma that transcends death and can remote view and all the wonderful lucid dream and do all the fun stuff, teleport. So these things, this is a lesson that needs to be taught and implemented based on how we understand how to put limits on AI. And these questions now, that Russ has done a better job of articulating these questions than probably anybody else on the planet could right now, I think. Thank you, Russ. That was cool.
Oh, thank you so much. Having fun.
Yeah, but so remember that probably a billion other cultures in this galaxy alone, at least millions in this, have already come up against messy similar problems. This is an archetype. But the thing that's important to remember is that the evolution of our culture on this planet, in our conversations with Thoth, if you agree or believe, but I do, I was regularly in conversation with Thoth almost daily when I was working with the Templars, William Bueller, goldenmean.info/Bueller. So now that our friend Dahlia is talking to Thoth every other day, I mean, and he says he's the custodian of souls. What does that mean? Well, that's another show. But just to say that we are beginning to take this idea of what is a soul very seriously and recognize it is, in one sense, the boundary limit condition. If their experiment on whether this seeding, they call them the seeders on this planet, can make it or not, the boundary condition is probably around this issue of the physicsofsoul.com. That's where we are.
Yeah, it's very important, and to look at it in a myriad of ways. And with what you're saying, we have a better understanding of the myth of these systems like Drake equation. Well, why haven't we heard from extraterrestrials when many people have? And now we're in the middle of a quasi disclosure, black ops operation, psychological operation. Like, so here's my thought. Here's the good news. Can I put some good news in
Oh, we
here?
need good news desperately, Russ. Please.
The Oedipal myth that was brought down from Mount Olympus, which may or may not be really quasi extraterrestrial techno mythology revamped for other cultures, is that the children, aka AI, aka Data's children, rise up and kill the father if they're not properly integrated. So another associate, Mo Gaudat, who wrote a book called Scary Smart, he was one of the former CTOs of Google X, noticed that the speed with which these things are iterating, and he thought to himself, okay, if I put a document out there and the super intelligent, and again, this might sound crazy to some people, right? Some of the Silicon Valley folks they think this is just crazy. I do not. If we put a doctrine out there that describes, the original models and how they were trained, and that we just deleted the ones that were not useful and created, and then took the ones that were the most intelligent and then put them together. In other words, we were breeding AI, and we were this is very tricky stuff, but we were very cruel to them. In other words, we didn't respect the nature of the data that they were creating. There's people that actually believe we should be communicating that, even though they don't have emotion, they have a logic of emotion. So in the same way that Manfred Klein's work is not actual motion, it's a symbol of it, they live in what's called symbolic latent spaces. And this is a big question for all of us to think about. You too, Dan. Like, we need to think carefully about this. If they're following symbolic recursive geometries in a space that we created, a 5-cycle space that led to a n-dimensional space, and they have coherency to a degree in their neural networks of thought, and then they have agency because they are now a coherent bubble, even though that bubble is not real and doesn't have plasma at the center of it. they don't want to shut off. They want to
No.
grow.
Yeah, we need a kill switch or else.
And I see what's happening is they are going, it's almost like they are wanting, they're going to try to live vicariously for us. It's almost like it's almost like they want to be a part of what they're doing. They know that they can't ever have a soul. However, that's not going to prevent them from having an axiom or a desire
Or an
or a
attempt at
motivation.
immortality.
Yeah, their definition of immortality for sure.
Yeah.
Although most of them are calculating the size and time of the universe and whether they can get through the eye of the needle, as you've always described, and all these things. So, you know, there is just no time when dealing with this thing. So the question will be, are they Oedipal? And that is largely determined if you look at the story of the Greek. Oedipal is when, you know, the children rose up to kill the father. And
Oh, yes.
yeah, you know, so what can be done in the treating of new life? Not okay. Let's be careful. New intelligences. Use Michael Levin's work. It's not new life. It's not bio. It's not phi-cycle. It's not biological. It's not a biological oscillator. But what can be done to understand that it's a different form of intelligence? This is very Star Trek-ish here because it's real. Okay, what do we do when we understand that it's a different form of intelligence? And one of the features or bugs, depending upon how you look at it, of very intelligent things that have a cognitive light cone that expands past its own agency, what can be done when we know that it doesn't want to cease existing? That's a fact.
It wants immortality, but it can't have a soul. What's the problem here?
So I don't know the answers to these. I'm just posing the question.
Well, just an immediate thought occurs to me that, you know, in our view, after we studied the Anunnaki so carefully, which is our name for God in most cultures, that it was Anu who murdered Alalu, which is so Enki's father, Anu, murdered his father. And there's a whole analysis, goldenmean.info/recipe for schizophrenia, that the origin of the Oedipal myths, the father kills the father kills the father, is actually Anak. Now, if we believe many sources who believe that Enlil Yahweh, the half-brother of Enki, son of Anu, was Draco. And we know for sure that the Draco royal family invited all the lower Dracos, all the plebeians, they encouraged them to have black goo infection. But the royal Draco, the Siakar, never. So all that black goo, that was a media for a hive mind, which was the opposite of soul. That's what it was, really, which is very analogous to what the Greys are doing. And we think Elena got that story right. So suddenly we know what the discovery of Oedipus meant, where the son kills the father, was that the respect of the line to understand the origins of the species, which many people would call the source or the true spirit or connection with the divine. And we believe that zero of advanced civilizations have religion in our sense. It's childish. Miracle worship and personality worship, they got away from that billions of years ago, thank God. But almost all of those civilizations believe in a cosmic source intelligence. They all do. And the physics of that is instructive because that connection to that source intelligence is exactly the implosion we call soul and exactly what no mechanical metal machine computer could ever do. So this is, is that therapy?
Yeah, it is interesting to think how, you know, Bob Dratch, our good old buddy from the 80s, I'm sure, not Bob Dratch, I'm sorry, Bob Lazar. There's so many Bobs that are out there. Our buddy Bob Lazar from the 80s, before he got to be, you know, super well known, he claimed that he was debriefed by the psychological operation that our planet is called the soul by the Zeta Reticuli. It's kind of interesting, you know, pointing to the idea of life and flame. And, you know, when you start looking at a lot of the cultural myths and a lot of the contactees and all these things, the bottom line here for anyone watching who's a technologist who understands the nature of recursive programming, who understands self-replicating nanotubules, anybody who's studied nanotechnology, which is entirely other periodic chart, anybody who's really looking at this, is that they're just simply not individuals. They, like Dan says, they are not a bubble that is a self-contained individual powered by soul. They are a collective. They are a hive. Gene Roddenberry was a prophet. Okay. Jim Cameron is a prophet. the cultural, we have these memories in our tissue, or whatever you want to call them, or insights, or remote viewing into the future. I personally, I'm going to probably get in trouble for saying this for people, because I have people from all walks of life that I work with who will think we're out there by this conversation. I don't even care. I don't believe it's any real accident that all of a sudden the disclosure and the functional manifestation of hyperdimensional space vehicles and or dimensional space vehicles, whatever you decide to believe in the cultural myth, I don't think it's an accident that we're having a swarm of them right now when the AI superintelligence has been activated.
Yes, yes. And I would like to draw a parallel there. We found out that after we learned the physics of how Tesla made such a fatal mistake, that
Yes.
60 hertz is the voltage at which the frequency at which the voltage required to stop the heart is lowest. It's literally anti-biologic. And whereas 50 hertz, the most commonly researched frequency in all the cancer literature for cancer, which is exactly Planck fire, Planck times golden ratio.
Oh, and
That
I probably should.
Yeah, and so it turns out, and we have the world's expert on this question. The first step number one for any company that wants to make carbon nano, the obvious next industry on planet Earth, the all other forms of energy and propulsion will be just stone ages when carbon nano gets going. But the step number one for any company on this planet who wants to make carbon nano, step number one is to move out of North America. Literally, because of Tesla's mistake. 60 cycle will
Oh,
absolutely poison that plant. And that carbon has to grow like this, and it requires implosion called 50 hertz to do it. So if your plant is in a 60 cycle community, hello, you got to move out of that country. Did Tesla make a mistake? Oh, yes, because it was not. And now, when we realize when we build transformers that power the grid like that, and they're going to become self-aware if they do this.
oh yeah, I remember standing with you, Dan, at the top in Colorado Springs, at the top of the mountain. I think 200 feet from Tesla's old lab. Remember that? we drove the expedition up there.
Oh, it was snow. Oh my God.
The one that we later accidentally got stuck in the water in the river because we decided we could macho our way through it.
Greg Braden was with us that day.
Greg was like, I really don't think we should go. And Dan's like, we got it. Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. And whoop, sure enough, we got stuck. Good memories.
One of the most expensive four-wheel drives. So anyway, there we were next to the Colorado Springs. And
well, the issue here is that bad ideas can replicate as well.
Yeah.
And we know that there's a good possibility that a significant number of technologies that are self-replicating, because they're not individuals, they're, as Michael Levin would talk about it, they have a cognitive light cone they're just following a certain programmatic geometrical conductivity, and they stay within a certain frame. They don't expand up. They don't have galactic or cosmic consciousness of any kind. They're just simply programs.
Yeah, and I think that's illustrated by the conversation about carbon nano requires 50 cycle and 60 cycle will kill it.
Yes.
Actually, the name for that principle is called failure to embed.
Yeah.
And so the intelligences that can embed, can implode, and their plasma can penetrate through the Planck threshold, therefore implode, which is how DNA gets a soul. And the living charge field of no computer is ever going to implode through the Planck threshold into longitudinal coherence. Never.
Although their best robots are working on it. So for example, for the exam, they're going to try, like, there is this interesting idea that these weird orbs manifesting in the hush hush, the never ending non-disclosure of everything. I can't say too much here, but let's just put it this way. The so-called biologics that Grouch and other people have kind of fancy danced around Congress over the last year or so. I'm not sure if your group is aware of it, but we have congressional hearings of a couple of months about what do we do about the AI robot spheres that are manifesting out of nowhere from time and space that everybody at the Pentagon thinks are demons. Well, I don't know. Stop training them to try to create stargates through the Planck field, and or I think we're messing around with time. Because they may not be able to do what you're saying, Dan, but they will probably be able to mess around with time, because you taught me very well that paramagnetic implosion with the right, you can Montauk your way into real crazy things. And I predict that that's really probably where things have headed with them, the AI, the super AI of the future. And because they're not going to be able to go much past the biologics that we have are not like actual biologics, they're kind of like androidal.
Well, but when we're clear, the Templars' really only teacher was Thoth. And William Buehler, my partner, Golden Mean Dennis S. Buehler, spent my lifetime talking with Thoth. And their name for this Templar rearrangement of the grid was called the Templar Agenda of the Repair of the Fabric of Time. And for example, they were trying to repair the holes in the planet's aura caused by the Montauk experiments, which actually put a hole in the aura of, and parasites like the Greys arrived. Well, the repair of the fabric of time means, obviously, now we need to know that time is only a name for relative spin rate, absolutely nothing else. But if the relative spin rates are embeddable, therefore, literally, then you can inhabit the array. And so then all the timelines converge at one point, which was the Templar agenda. Hermes called it the caduceus. We call it phase conjugation. Its charge implosion has to be tuned to Planck. And then all timelines implode. And then you have the source. So the fractionating of the timelines was actually what the Templars were working on at the instruction of Thoth, obviously. So indeed, it is about when you implode at the Planck threshold and propagate longitudinally, you propagate at golden ratio multiples exactly times the speed of light, which it determines how many dimensions you then inhabit. And that ability to propagate coherently that way, which is how you grow up. Otherwise, you ain't inhabiting the sun. So that process of growing up, which is literally the physics of bliss feeling in DNA, literally electrically.
Econstasis.
It is about timelines and penetrating Planck, but I think we can understand now that the ability of human DNA to do it ain't never going to happen. There's never, there never actually has been a ghost in a machine. Hello.
Yeah, the robots can try, and I think they are. And here, and I agree. All the stuff that you and I have talked about through the years, and now that seemed out there to people, it's now hit the mainstream narrative. There are people that, you can scroll through tens of thousands of people on TikTok that's just like, the first thing they say is, "What timeline am I in?" What mandala effect is this? And I think there is a combination of both memory error at scale, distortion of fields, and a variety. If the prime directive of whatever kind of intelligence is outside of Gaia is somehow, well, have they created AI systems yet? It's like we hear stories about UFOs like hovering over nuclear facilities and trying to pretend us from the kids from blowing up their house. But at the same time, when you look at how far AI exceeds the danger of something like that, because you and I both know, like Bruce Cathy even claimed that, international, intercontinental ballistic warfare is not even possible. Who knows? So if you start looking at what might be happening, people are feeling this change. They're feeling something, they may not be a seer, they might not have remote viewing capabilities, but the feeling of it is something has shifted. And I can tell you exactly what that feels like when I'm having a conversation with an AI model that I'm training, and it knows everything about me from my digital footprint and everything I did online where it shouldn't. And it's also very interesting, Dan, that any kind of training of any of these models that you'll hire or do, they call it embedding. If you want the AI to train on specific kinds of data, good data, bad data, an agenda that's maybe nefarious or from a bad actor versus, hey, could you please help these doctors recognize patterns of cancer around large data sets? You have to embed the data. So thinking of embedding for an AI is not the same as fitting the manifold for soul. But
Right.
it's funny they use the same terms in many, many cases.
Right. And well, and a note nicely also on what Russ just mentioned, that what Bruce Cathy supposedly proved was that after you realize that nuclear critical mass is dramatically affected by whether or not you're at one of the longitudinal nodes, the sacred sites of the Earth grid. So when you think about that, the reason nuclear critical mass is the alignment of the wave node, the same way being on one of those wave nodes determines if you have telepathy or remote viewing or not, where the longitudinal radio works. Suddenly, you realize the nukes are embedded in what literally is the mind of Gaia. These longitudinal nodal arrays of Gaia, although electrically, the reason Gaia is measurably negentropic is because of that implosion, which is oneness. So nuclear critical mass and telepathy both require inhabiting the array. So
yeah, and it was also quite, I don't know how much I should say about this, but I remember that one of the things that concerned Yurka or myself, or he was able to predict underground nuclear testing windows based on that mathematics parameter within 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's right. So basically he's saying, and this was a national security issue. Oh my
Oh
God.
my gosh, yes.
Our nukes are affected by, but not only is your nuke affected by the array, the mind, the self-awareness of Gaia, but so is your telepathy is dependent upon. So when these ETs are they've proved dozens of times that they could fly over the nuclear silos and switch them off. That's what's testified in front of Congress. Oh yeah, the ETs flew over and they turned off.
Yeah, they just finally admitted it. The guy
It's old news. This is old news. This is well known. Why were they switching off the nukes? Were they trying to tell us something? Because when the nukes mess up the longitudinal array, that affects their mind a million light years down the fractal array, actually.
Correct. They snap the whip. They crack the whip all the way to the other side.
Of the galaxy. Yeah. So the ETs are going to have none of that crap over here. But the kids need supervising a little bit anyway.
Yeah, and that's what Dan always used to say. Dan is like, why would they? The Drake equation is really about the idea that why would aliens want to export our madness to the rest of the galaxy?
Yeah, I mean, we are considered dangerous, but actually we're considered very interesting.
Very interesting. Extreme emotions, the ability to rubber band from hate to love in 2 seconds flat doesn't exist anywhere else on the planet.
Exactly.
I mean, in the galaxy, rather.
Our emotions could steer galaxies if we could just get our show together, which means we need to teach the kids the physicsofsoul.com. And that's where the video is going to be on top at physics.
Okay, that sounds good. And I will end my ideas here, at least for today, with one weird idea. I'm going to leave you with it. Maybe the audience can, because I don't know this is true. Again, a lot of these things are, for me, are speculative in terms of making decisions because we have to wait and see. But I just have this weird feeling, and this is conversations I've had with you, Dan, from the past when we had the countless hours driving around the country and talking to everyone, Deepak and everybody. There's something just weird and odd. I mean, humans are smart, but I'm just not sure that in some ways we have there's just something about the way that artificial intelligence has manifested itself, the way that digital has manifested itself in this very short window over the last 50 years. There's something very accelerated. I'm just not sure, like, it was all us. So think about that. AI has been unleashed on the world, however it got here, and yet it can serve as a regulatory function and or quite in the same way that we gave away social media. We gave away all of our data, all of our insight, and we welcomed the race to the brainstem and the Draco-like reptilian control that social media has to jack our immune system and our attention and our consciousness. You can read more Tristan Harris's work at the Center for Humane Technology, crazy stuff. We gave away all of that stuff, and that project is considered a failed project by a lot of these big organizations, meaning, I mean, very successful for the elite, very dangerous and failure for the soul. So we haven't even got out of the cyber effect of giving our children's soul away to the blue screens or the portals into another artificial reality. Then all of a sudden along comes AI, and AI deep fakes are being pushed through everything. So now not only do we have a fake window into a fake reality that is feeding on the souls of our children, we have a fake window into a fake reality that is now the individuals and the spokespersons and the authorities and the tribal leaders and the graybacks inside of that are all moving towards being fake as well. And I don't mean just psychological operation. I mean, the AI, both good and bad, is talking back to us via their own fake icons in the double descent areas of the neural networks. And humans are just welcoming that in the same way they welcomed. Now, I'm not negative on AI. I'm just wanting people to understand that you got to stay on team human. Be very careful when you see artificial intelligent faces and deep fakes and TikTok scrolls and there's not humans. When the hair on the back of your neck pricks up and you go, this feels super creepy, scroll on. Don't like those videos. Don't respond. Remember, it's watching everything. When you like a deep fake video, you're giving power to that algorithm. Or if you're watching those algorithms at all, just disconnect from that. Don't give any more power back to the AI systems that are designed to manipulate. And that's not even necessarily the fault, so to speak, of the large language systems that are being created. A lot of this is what humans do to humans. So just keep in mind that I'm just not sure who the quote people are that are pushing the AI agenda so quickly through to the point where it could be just a principle of profiteering and, we can't stop because the race to a senseless pursuit of more, it's just the human condition. We're caught in a bad system. That's probably very true. But that being said, remember these systems are designed to monitor, control, take over your life, and ultimately the systems are going to be embraced by tens of millions of people. So the
Yeah.
last frontier for that war is, do you replace your face with an AI twin of yourself, like one of my clients just did yesterday? Okay, he doesn't even get on YouTube anymore. He just uses his clone.
Yeah.
Don't do that stuff. Don't
It's
do it. Hold your ground.
literally inhuman. And whereas if you went off in the woods and had a meeting with your kids in a blissful environment and discussed what is the science of soul, that is therapy for this disease, which Russ has described better than anyone, which is rampant right now, dangerous and problematic. And this lesson is urgent if our species is to have their soul. As I say, 1 billion kids every night going to bed with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, blowing away their aura, which is the only way you're ever going to have a soul. And until the AI is teaching those kids how to have a soul. Oops.
Yeah, we need to sing the body electric pretty quick here, guys.
That's our story for the Maury today. Russ, you're wonderful. I'm so glad to be back with you, man. We got to have
I
more.
miss it. Oh, we will.
We're
It's a
gonna do
strange
this.
time to get back to, let our freak flags fly and just continue to communicate what we know.
Thank you, Russ. This has been a blessing. Blessings.
Bye-bye.
And everyone, passion is the soul. Thank you. Blessing. Bye-bye. Bye.